Across centuries and civilizations, the treatment of women has been marked by impossible standards, harsh judgments, and brutal consequences. Many of these punishments seem unthinkable to us today, yet they were common in societies that sought to control women's behavior and bodies in the most cruel and inhumane ways. Welcome to Secrets of Ancient Times, where we delve deep into the dark side of history. Today, we'll be exploring the terrifying reality of punishments imposed on women through the ages. From footbinding in Imperial China to the harsh methods of medieval Europe and beyond, this journey will uncover the untold suffering endured by countless women, all in the name of control and order. Let's begin in 10th century China, where the ideal of feminine beauty was taken to an extreme that would haunt generations. The practice of footbinding began during the Song dynasty, inspired by the legendary dancer Yao Niang, who bound her feet into the shape of a crescent to perform for the emperor. The ideal soon spread throughout the imperial court, transforming into a brutal beauty standard that would persist for over 1,000 years. Footbinding wasn't just painful, it was crippling. Girls as young as 5 or 6 would have their feet tightly bound, breaking bones and deforming their growth. Over time, the bound feet became known as golden lotuses, a mark of status and desirability, but behind this practice lay unimaginable pain. Women struggled to walk, their feet permanently disfigured. And yet, for centuries, this was considered the height of beauty and femininity. It's hard to imagine the lengths women went to in order to achieve the perfect 3-inch foot. But footbinding wasn't just about beauty, it was about control. By keeping women physically dependent, bound feet reinforced a social order where women were kept out of public life, limiting their mobility and freedom. Tragically, the practice continued well into the 20th century, with the last known factory producing lotus shoes closing as late as 1999. In 19th century Europe, women also faced their own torturous beauty ideals. The corset, introduced centuries earlier, was designed to shape the female figure into an exaggerated hourglass. At first, these garments were relatively mild, but by the Victorian era, corsets had evolved into devices of extreme constraint. Women wore them for long hours every day, pulling the laces tighter and tighter to achieve the smallest waist possible. Anthropological studies have revealed the lasting damage these corsets caused. The tight compression deformed the ribs and shifted internal organs, leading to difficulty breathing, digestive issues, and even permanent skeletal damage. Yet, women were expected to endure this discomfort, all in the pursuit of the Victorian ideal of femininity. It's no wonder that fainting became such a common occurrence among women of the era. Medical records from the time show that women's health was deeply affected by this relentless pursuit of physical perfection. And yet, just like footbinding in China, the corset wasn't only about beauty. It was about reinforcing societal control over women, confining them both physically and metaphorically. But while beauty ideals brought one form of suffering, other punishments were designed purely to silence women. One of the most horrifying examples of this is the Scold's bridle, a device used across Europe from the 16th to the 19th centuries. Women who were accused of being too outspoken, or scolds, would have this iron mask forced over their heads, with a metal gag inserted into their mouths, often spiked, to cause additional pain. The purpose of this device was clear: to humiliate and silence women who dared to speak out of turn. It wasn't just a tool of punishment, it was a tool of control, used to enforce the belief that a woman's place was to be quiet and obedient. Women who defied these norms were publicly shamed, forced to wear the Scold's bridle in marketplaces, sometimes for hours or days. Public punishments weren't limited to the Scold's bridle, though. Throughout medieval Europe, women could be subjected to tortures like the breast ripper or the Spanish donkey, devices that inflicted unimaginable pain and suffering, often as punishment for crimes like adultery or simply defying the rigid gender norms of the time. The breast ripper was exactly as horrifying as it sounds. Made from iron claws, this device was heated and used to tear away the flesh of women accused of moral offenses, such as adultery or heresy. Its purpose wasn't just to punish the victim, but to send a clear message to other women. Step outside the boundaries set by society, and you will suffer. The Spanish donkey was another gruesome method of torture, used on both men and women, but disproportionately targeting women for moral crimes. The victim would be forced to sit on a sharp, triangular plank, with weights tied to their feet, slowly increasing the pressure until their bodies were torn apart. The sheer brutality of these devices is a chilling reminder of the lengths to which societies have gone to control women's bodies and behaviors. It wasn't just about punishment. It was about reinforcing a social order where women were kept in their place through fear and violence if necessary. And then there was the witch hunt, a phenomenon that swept through Europe and the American colonies in the early modern period. From the late 15th century to the 18th century, thousands of women were accused of witchcraft, often based on nothing more than suspicion or superstition. Many of these women were healers, midwives, or simply those who lived alone or acted outside of societal norms. Accused witches were subjected to trials that were nothing more than exercises in terror. They were tortured, forced to confess to crimes they hadn't committed, and then burned at the stake or hanged. The hysteria surrounding witchcraft was driven by fear of the unknown, fear of women's independence, and fear of anything that couldn't be controlled by the church or state. In many ways, the witch trials were the ultimate expression of control over women. They weren't just about punishing those accused of witchcraft, they were about maintaining a rigid social order where women who were seen as too powerful, too independent, or too different were eliminated. While we'd like to think that these horrors are firmly in the past, the reality is that echoes of these punishments still resonate today. Around the world, women continue to face violence and persecution for defying societal norms. Whether through laws restricting reproductive rights, cultural practices that oppress women, or the systemic silencing of women's voices, the battle for gender equality is far from over. But history also shows us the strength and resilience of women. Despite centuries of oppression and violence, women have always found ways to resist, to fight back, and to demand their rightful place in society. From the suffragettes of the early 20th century to the feminists of today, women continue to challenge the systems that seek to control them. While the past is filled with horrifying examples of cruelty, it's important to remember how far we've come. Women's resilience, their fight for rights, and their contributions to society have brought us closer to a world of equality and respect. Today, we have the power to learn from history and ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. As we continue to move forward, we must honor the memory of those who suffered by striving for a world where all are treated with dignity and fairness. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the untold stories of the past.